The quiet of deep space was not a true quiet. Not to Captain Lee June. It was a canvas painted with the soft, electrical hum of his ship, the Chosen shield, and the gentle, rhythmic breath of his crew on the bridge. He liked this quiet. It was earned. Outside the viewport, the stars were sharp, unwinking points, the black between them absolute and cold. A soft chime broke the calm. At her station, Commander Kim Era straightened. "Captain," she said, her voice level. "A wide beam, Priority 1 communique. Galactic Concord origin. It's repeating." "On screen," June ordered, his weathered hands resting on the arms of his command chair. The starfield was replaced by a being of breathtaking fragility and beauty. Its skin had a soft, internal luminescence, and its large, liquid eyes were dark with a terror so profound it seemed to leach the warmth from the room. It spoke in a melodious, translated voice that trembled. "This is Envoy Alara of the Galactic Concord. We beseech any listening species in good standing. Our core worlds are under assault by an entity designated Ravager. It consumes all energy, biological, technological, stellar. Our defenses are ineffective. Our people are dying. We require immediate military and logistical aid. We offer compensation, territory, knowledge. Please, anyone, help us." The message ended and began to repeat. June watched it once more, his face a mask of carved stone. He had seen that look before, not on an alien's face, but in a mirror, long ago, in the aftermath of the Jakarta tsunami. It was the look of a creature who had just realized the universe was an uncaring, brutal place. "Timestamp?" he asked. "4 standard days old," Era replied. Her fingers danced over her console, pulling up supplemental data-fragmented sensor logs, distorted video. She displayed it on a side screen. The Ravager swarm was a moving stain, like oil on water, swallowing glittering cities and tranquil landscapes. Concord ships, graceful as birds, fired beams of light that simply vanished into the swarm. The swarm touched them, and they went dark, tumbling husks. Analysis? June's voice was a low rumble. "The Concord tech is elegant," Era said, choosing her words carefully. "High-energy plasma weapons, quantum shielding. It's about finesse, about overloading systems. The Ravagers seem to absorb that energy. They're like a physical immune response to high technology." She zoomed in on a still frame. The swarm wasn't just machines. It had a fleshy, pulsating quality, with tendrils that seemed to burrow into metal and rock alike. And they're fast. They've taken 3 core worlds in as many weeks. The bridge crew watched in silence. Park Min, the chief engineer, let out a low whistle. "Pretty lights won't stop that. You need a hammer." "Or a virus," murmured Choi Hana, the chief medical officer, from her station near the rear. She was studying the biological readouts. "The energy drain has a cellular component. It induces rapid system-wide failure in the Concord species. Their physiology is too optimized. No redundancy." June knew the unspoken conclusion. The Concord, for all their wonders, were delicate. They had built a paradise and forgotten how to fight for it. "Any response logs?" June asked. Era worked for a moment, accessing the public galactic net. Her lips thinned. Over 200 species received the plea. Official responses from the Tri-Consortium, the Viridian Hegemony, the Kasari. All polite refusals. Strategic interests preclude direct intervention. Our technological profile is incompatible with the threat. Our deepest condolences. She looked up, her dark eyes meeting June's. No one is going. A hollow feeling settled in June's gut. It wasn't surprise. Earth, his Earth, was a Class 10 death world. A cautionary tale in galactic textbooks. Gravity 1.2 G standard, atmosphere corrosive, tectonic activity extreme, biosphere hyper-aggressive. Humans were the monsters that crawled out of that pit, viewed with a mixture of pity and fear. They were strong, durable, reckless. They were not invited to polite society. He was about to give the order to resume their cargo-run ferrying titanium alloy to the Martian shipyards, when a new icon flashed on Era's panel. An incoming tight beam communication. Origin, Earth Lunar Command. Put it through. June said. The face of Admiral Park, stern and gray-haired, filled the screen. Captain Lee, you've seen the Concorde plea. We have, sir. Lunar Command's position is one of non-intervention. Politically, it's a quagmire. We have no treaty with the Concorde. Getting involved could draw hostility from other powers. The official stance is to observe. June said nothing. He knew there was a but. Admiral Park's gaze was heavy. However, the Chosen Shield is currently in the Ryzen sector. That is, coincidentally, within possible jump range of the primary Concorde relief coordinates. What your ship does, on its own initiative, with its own discretion, is a matter of Captain's prerogative. Do you understand? June felt a flicker of familiar fire. The unspoken order. The old human tradition of looking the other way so the right thing could be done. I understand perfectly, Admiral. Good. Park out. The screen went dark. All eyes on the bridge were on June. He could feel their will, a solid, palpable thing. These were Deathworlders. They had grown up with earthquakes and typhoons, with diseases that scarred and predators that hunted. They understood survival, and they understood that sometimes survival meant standing together. He stood up. Commander Era, sir. Plot a series of microjumps to the Concorde rendezvous point, Lyria Prime. Maximum burn. We'll need to be careful. Their spaces? Cluttered with pretty things that break easily. A faint smile touched Era's lips. Course plotted, Captain. Park Min. I want a full diagnostic on all kinetic battery systems. Switch primary armament to railguns and missile pods. Shut down all non-essential energy outputs. If these things eat pretty lights, we'll give them bullets and rock. Aye, sir, Park Min said, his hands already flying over his engineering console. Bringing the hammers online. Choi Hanna, prep the medbay for mass trauma. Alien physiology. Assume energy depletion and systemic shock. Work with the data we have and be ready to improvise. Choi Hanna nodded, her face already set in the calm, focused expression of a surgeon. I'll start cross-referencing their biosigns with extreme endurance cases. We'll be ready. June took a deep breath, the air of his ship tasting of ozone and determination. Open a channel to the Concorde distress frequency. Tight beam, text only. Channel open, Captain. Era confirmed. June thought for a second. No grand speeches. No promises they couldn't keep. Just the facts. He leaned toward the mic. Hold on. Help coming. He nodded to Era. Message sent. Origin tagged. Earth vessel Chosen Shield. For a long moment, there was silence on the bridge. Then, from the tactical station, Marine Sergeant Kang Dae, a man built like a barrel of granite, chuckled. It was a low, rough sound. They begged for aid. Looks like only the monsters are answering the call. June settled back into his command chair, the worn leather creaking under him. The stars on the viewport began to streak as the Chosen Shield's engines powered up, a deep vibration thrumming through the deck. Then let's show them, he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the bridge, what monsters can do. The docking ring of the Star Dock was a place of pristine, sterile beauty. The air was filtered to a scentless purity, the light soft and even, and the gravity a gentle. Standard 1G, it felt wrong to Captain Lee June, The chosen shield was clamped to the ring like a scarred. Feral beast leashed next to a flock of crystal birds. His ship bore the marks of its home. The hull was not smooth and gleaming, but armored with dull, ceramic tungsten plates, streaked with the ghostly residues of atmospheric entry burns. Micrometeorite pockmarks dotted its surface like acne. Next to the Concorde vessel's sleek silver things that seemed to float without engines, it looked primitive. Brutal June stood in the airlock with Commander Kim Era. They wore their standard duty uniforms. Simple dark blue fatigues, but they had taken the time to make them crisp. It was a form of respect. Sergeant Kang Dae and two of his Marines stood behind them, a silent, imposing presence in unadorned body armor. They carried no visible weapons, but their posture screamed readiness. The inner door hissed open. A wave of warm, perfumed air washed over them, thick with unfamiliar floral scents. It was cloying. June saw Era's nostrils flare slightly in distaste. A delegation of Concorde beings awaited them. At their head was the one from the broadcast envoy Ilara. In person, her fragility was breathtaking. She was tall and willowy, with skin that glowed with a soft, inner blue light. Her large eyes, now wide with a mixture of hope and deep anxiety, seemed to take up much of her face. She was draped in flowing silks that shimmered. Behind her stood others of similar build, some with different hues of light, all watching the humans with undisguised shock. Ilara moved forward, her steps graceful but hesitant. She spoke, and a device on her wrist provided translation in a soft, gender-neutral voice. Captain Lee Jun, on behalf of the Concorde of Light, we welcome you. Your response was the only one. Jun gave a short, respectful bow from the waist. Envoy Ilara, we came as fast as we could. His own voice, unaltered, sounded rough and deep in the delicate space. Ilara's eyes flicked past him, taking in the Marines, their solid forms, their watchful eyes. She looked at Era, who met her gaze with calm assessment. Your vessel. Ilara began, searching for a polite word. It appears to have seen hardship. It has, June said simply. It is built for it. May we proceed? Time is critical. Of course. This way, please. They were led into a meeting chamber. The walls were transparent, offering a stunning view of the nebula the star dock orbited. The furniture was low and soft, designed for reclining. June and Era sat, their backs straight. Kang Dae and his men took positions by the door, standing perfectly still. Another Concorde being, introduced as Scholar Nice, activated a holodisplay. It showed the Ravager swarm engulfing the planet Lyria. The footage was clearer now, more horrific. The swarm moved like a black tide, and where it passed, everything city lights, energy signatures, life signs winked out into cold. Dark silence. Our strategy has failed, Scholar Nice said, his translated voice trembling. Our weapons feed them. Our shields are drained in moments. They appear to be a hybrid biomechanical entity, evolving countermeasures in real time. They have neutralized every form of energy projection we possess. Era leaned forward. You've tried kinetic weapons? Projectiles? Scholar Noyce blinked slowly, as if the question was confusing. Physical ordnance is primitive, inefficient. It requires massive payloads for minimal effect. Our ship hulls are not designed for the stress of recoil from such crude systems. June exchanged a glance with Era. A world of understanding passed between them. We would like to see your tactical data, Era said. Specifically, the energy absorption rates. There must be a threshold, a saturation point. While Era and Scholar Nice began talking, their conversation quickly filling with technical terms, Ilara's attention remained on June and his people. She watched as Medic Choi Hana, who had joined them quietly, examined a readout of Concord physiology on a datapad. Choi Hana's face was a mask of professional focus, but Elara saw her brow furrow at the readings. "Your medic finds us lacking?" Elara asked softly. Choi. Hana looked up, her expression softening. "No, Envoy. Not lacking. Different. Your systems are incredibly efficient. But efficiency means there is little redundancy. You have one primary cardiac organ, one neural plexus. Your cells are fine-tuned for a stable environment." She tilted her head. "On Earth, we have backups. Secondary systems. Our bodies are noisy, inefficient. They waste energy. But if one pathway fails, 3 others can take over. It makes us harder to shut down." Elara absorbed this. Her eyes moved to Kong Day. The sergeant had not moved a muscle, but his eyes were constantly scanning the room, the viewport, the ceiling. "Your soldiers? They are very still. Yet they seem coiled." June followed her gaze. "They are waiting. On our world, stillness often comes before action. A predator is still before it strikes. A person in a collapsing building is still, listening for the next beam to crack. They are assessing your chamber for threats, for cover, for escape routes. It is not distrust. It is habit." A chime sounded. Scholar Nice looked distressed. The Ravager Vanguard has broken through the Lyrian inner defense belt. The planetary shield will fail in less than 12 hours. Panic fluttered through the Concord delegates. Their light patterns flickered erratically. June stood up. The movement was not loud, but it cut through the fear like a knife. All eyes turned to him. "Then we have no more time for talk. We will deploy immediately." Elara rose, her silks whispering. "Captain, with respect. You have one ship. We had hundreds. What can you do?" June looked at her, and for the first time, he allowed a hint of the death world to show in his eyes. It was not anger, but a patient, weary resolve forged in billions of years of terrestrial violence. "You fight with light," he said, his voice low. "We will fight with mass. You fight from a distance. We will get close. You defend your world. We will attack theirs." He turned to his crew. "Era, you have the data. Work with Scholar and Wise. Find me a weak point, a concentration point. A target for a hammer." He looked at Kong Day. "Sergeant, back to the ship. Full combat load. Coil guns, armor-piercing rounds, shaped charges. We're going digging." He turned back to Elara, who was staring at him as if seeing a new species entirely. Perhaps she was. "Envoy," June said. "We need the exact coordinates of the Ravager's ground-based nexus on Lyria, the heart of the swarm. We are going to land on your world, and we are going to cut it out. You will." "Land? Into that?" Elara's luminous skin paled. "Where we come from," June said, walking towards the door, his boots making solid, definite sounds on the polished floor. "The ground is the only thing you can truly trust. It's always there, even when it's trying to kill you. We will send you the battle plan. Be ready." The human delegation left the chamber, a knot of dense, purposeful movement, exiting the realm of light and perfume. Behind them, the Concord beings stood in silence, the image of the dying world still spinning in the air before them. Scholar Nice finally spoke, his voice full of awe and dread. "They are not what I expected. They are not civilized." Elara watched the empty doorway where the solid, dark shape of Captain June had vanished. A strange feeling, cold and hard, was forming in her chest, cutting through the despair. It felt like the skeleton of hope. "No," she whispered to herself, remembering the captain's eyes. "They are something else. They are survivors." Lyria was a wound in space. From orbit, it was a beautiful marble of blues and greens, now scarred by a spreading, pulsing black infection. The chosen shield hung over the night side, its lights off, a shadow among shadows. On the bridge, the only illumination came from the tactical displays, painting the crew's faces in harsh shades of green and red. Atmospheric entry in 5, Pilot Song Yujin's voice was calm in the darkness. Her hands rested lightly on the controls. Turbulence will be extreme. The Ravagers are disrupting the upper atmosphere with some kind of energy bleed. Captain Li Jun gripped the arms of his chair. Understood. Take us down the throat, Yujin. Straight to the target. The coordinates from Scholar Noice marked a location near the planet's equator, a former Concord energy refinery that the Ravagers had converted into a nexus. A beating heart for the swarm. The ship began to shudder. It was not the clean shake of re-entry, but a violent, jarring series of impacts, as if they were flying through a storm of stones. Alarms blared. Energy drain detected. Era called out. It's a field. It's trying to suck our reactors dry. Park Min. June barked. On it. The engineer shouted back, his hands a blur. Rerouting all primary power through secondary conduits. Shunting to batteries. Going dark on main systems. Across the bridge, screens and panels went black, switching to low-power, hardened backups. The ship groaned as its electronic systems were stripped down to the bones. But the engines, crude fusion torches, kept burning. The Ravager field was tuned for clean, high-yield energy. The noisy, wasteful, brute force output of a Deathworlder fusion drive was like trying to sip from a fire hose. Cleared the field, Yujin reported, a thin layer of sweat on her brow. Hull temperature critical, but holding. Entering the soup, they plunged into the planet's smoke-filled skies. Below, the world was a nightmare. The Ravager swarm covered entire continents, a living, moving darkness. Where it had passed, the land was leached of color and life, a gray, dead scar. The remaining pockets of Concord resistance were tiny islands of light, flickering desperately. The Nexus was ahead. It was no longer a refinery. It was a colossal, pulsating tumor of black metal and wet, organic-looking tissue. Tendrils thicker than skyscrapers dug into the planet's crust, throbbing with stolen energy. Swarms of smaller, drone-like forms buzzed around it like flies. Sergeant Kong, June said, his voice cutting through the tension. You are go. Get in, plant the charges on the central core, and get out. You have 40 minutes before the shield has to be clear for orbital strike. In the troop bay, Sergeant Kong Day listened to the captain's voice in his helmet. Around him, 10 Marines checked their gear for the final time. Their armor was bulky, powered by kinetic cells, not energy packs. Their weapons were heavy coil guns firing solid slugs and explosive charges. Ura, Kong Day said, the old word feeling right. A chorus of Ura echoed back. The chosen shield dropped like a stone, leveling out just a few 100 meters above the dead ground. The rear ramp hissed open, screaming wind and the smell of ozone and decay flooding in. Without a word, Kang Day and his squad ran down the ramp and into the war. The ground was not ground. It was a crust of brittle, gray material over a network of the Ravagers' root-like tendrils. It cracked under their boots. The air hummed with a frequency that made their teeth ache. Small, scuttling Ravager forms, like metallic crabs, emerged from holes. The Marines didn't break stride. Their coil guns coughed, a sound dull and physical, not the bright zip of energy weapons. The solid slugs punched through the crab things, splattering ichor, and kept going. It was messy. It was inelegant. It worked. They moved fast, a wedge of armored fury. Kang Day watched his squad. They used cover instinctively, not energy shields. When a larger Ravager, like a walking collection of blades, lunged from a pit, Private Kim tackled it low, while Corporal Lee put 3 rounds into its core at point-blank range. They fought as a single organism, communicating in grunts and hand signals. Above, the Chosen shield was a dancing shadow. Song Yujin skimmed the ship over the terrain, drawing fire. Glowing plasma bolts from Ravager emplacements streaked up. She rolled the ship, letting the bolts graze the thick armor. "They're learning," she muttered. Starting to aim. "Just keep them busy, Yujin," Jun said, his eyes glued to the squad's telemetry on his screen. Little green dots moving through a sea of red. Kong Day's team reached the base of the Nexus. It rose above them like a rotten mountain. The central core was visible through a lattice of throbbing tissue, a massive dark sphere. "Charge is ready," Kong Day said. "Cover us." The Marines set up a perimeter. The Ravagers came in a wave. This was not the disorganized scuttling from before. This was a coordinated defense. Bladed limbs, energy whips, acid projectiles. A Marine cried out as a whip cracked and wrapped around his leg, slicing through armor. He fell, firing his sidearm into the thing holding him until it let go. "Medic Choi." Hana's voice was calm in their helmets from the ship. "Lee, you have a deep laceration and potential acid burn. Apply neutralizer from Kit 3. Pressure on the wound. You are still mobile. Keep moving." The wounded Marine gritted his teeth, did as instructed, and kept firing. Kong Day and his demolitions expert, Private Park, scrambled up the shifting, warm surface of the Nexus. They planted the shaped charges, magnetic clamps holding them fast to the core sphere. "Charges set. Remote trigger active." Kong Day yelled. "Fall back. Fall back to extraction point." The squad disengaged, dragging their wounded. The Ravager pursuit was relentless. They were being funneled into a canyon of dead rock. On the bridge, Era saw it. "Captain, they're being herded. There's an energy spike building ahead of them, some kind of trap." June didn't hesitate. "Yujin, get down there. Scrape them off." Song Yujin didn't answer. She just swung the Chosen shield into a screaming dive. The ship tore through the buzzing drone cloud, its hull screeching in protest. It came in low over the Marines, its shadow a brief moment of salvation. Rear ramp still open, it skimmed the ground. "Jump." Kong Day ordered. The Marines leaped, grabbing onto the ramp or the netting inside. Kong Day was the last. He turned and fired a final defiant burst at the pursuing tide, then leaped. A strong hand, Private Kim's, grabbed his arm and hauled him in as the ramp began to close. All accounted for. 1 critical, 3 walking wounded. Kong Day gasped over the comms. "Good work." "Sergeant," June said, the relief brief. "Yujin, get us vertical. Now." The Chosen shield pointed its nose to the sky and burned its engines white-hot. Behind them, the Ravager trap, a massive energy cannon, fired. The beam lanced past them, missing by meters, searing the hull, but not piercing it. In orbit. Envoy Alara and Scholar Noyce watched the sensor feed, their hearts in their throats. They had seen the brutal physical struggle. They had seen the humans bleed, seen their ship take hits that would have shattered a Concorde vessel. They had seen the humans win by refusing to die. Chum looked at the tactical screen. The green dot of the remote trigger was blinking. He opened a channel to the Nexus. "For Lyria," he said quietly, and pressed the button. Below, on the planet, light did not erupt. Instead, there was a profound physical convulsion. The shaped charges fired, not out, but in. They focused all their fury on the central core sphere. There was a soundless flash of pure force, and then the entire Nexus collapsed in on itself, like a building whose foundation had been vaporized. The black tumor imploded, the throbbing tendrils going limp. The swarm in the immediate area went into a frenzied, disorganized spiral, before falling still. On the bridge of the Chosen Shield, climbing towards clean space, there was no cheer. Only a deep, exhausted silence. They had shown the galaxy how monsters fought. And for the first time, on the dying world below, the dark tide had been turned back, not by a laser, but by a hammer. The air in the Chosen Shield's med bay was thick with the smells of antiseptic, blood, and ozone. The quiet was broken by the low beeps of monitors and the occasional grunt of pain. Medic Choi Hana moved between the beds, her hands steady, her face a mask of calm focus. She had 3 Concord patients and 5 of her own Marines. The Concord beings lay on specially adjusted beds, their luminous skin dim. They suffered from systemic shock. Their elegant biological systems had been pushed to the brink by the Ravager's energy-sapping field. Hana's treatments were a strange mix. She used the ship's advanced synthesizers to create compounds that stabilized their cell membranes. But she also employed physical stimulation. Massaging limbs to encourage circulation. Their bodies had all but forgotten how to do on their own. You are. Touching the patient? A Concord assistant asked, its large eyes wide. Blood needs to move, Hana said simply, not stopping her work. Even your blood. When the pump is weak, you help it along. One of her Marines, Private Lee, had a deep, acid-burned gash on his leg. The Ravager fluid had eaten through his armor and into the muscle. On a nearby tray, next to a laser scalpel, lay an old-fashioned steel scalpel, a bone saw, and clamps. The acid is neutralized, but the tissue is dead, Hana said to him, her voice low and direct. I have to cut it out. The Reagan stem will work after, but not on dead flesh. It will hurt. A lot. Private Lee, pale but conscious, nodded. Just do it, Doc. She gave him a local anesthetic, but it was a limited dose. She needed him to feel enough to tell her if she hit a nerve cluster. She began to cut. It was quick, precise, and brutal. The Marine's knuckles turned white as he gripped the bed frame, his jaw clamped shut. Hana removed the blackened tissue, dropped it into a bin, cleaned the wound, and sprayed it with a foam that instantly hardened into a sterile, oxygenating dressing. Then she injected the Reagan stim. All done, she said, patting his shoulder. You'll walk with a limp for a week. Then you'll be fine. In the observation room overlooking the medbay, Envoy Ilara watched, a hand over her mouth. She had never seen such a physical form of healing. To her, medicine was about light and frequencies, about coaxing the body back to balance. This was carpentry. This was butchery. And it was saving lives. Captain June found her there later, on her way to the bridge. She looked at him, her glow still subdued. Your medic. She is a warrior, too. June nodded. On Earth, the line between fixing and fighting is thin. Doctors there learn triage in disaster zones. They learn to work with dirt and blood and not enough power. It makes them practical. Practical. Ilara repeated the word as if it were alien. It seems harsh. Life is harsh, June said. She just remembers that. He led her to the ship's small observation lounge, a room with a real window, not a screen. The stars were sharp out here, away from the nebula's glow. They sat in silence for a while, watching the cosmos turn. Why did you come? Ilara asked finally, the question that had haunted her since the docking ring. You owe us nothing. Your world. Your people are not part of our Concord. You risked everything. June was quiet for a long time. He thought of the mountains of his home, of typhoons that could flatten cities, of winters that could freeze a man solid in an hour. He thought of the silence after an avalanche, and the desperate digging that followed. On my world, he began slowly, there is a saying, you don't build a wall to keep out the weather. The universe is like that weather. It is big, and it is cold, and it does not care if you live or die. On Earth, we learned early that you cannot hide from it. All you have are the people next to you. He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. We heard your cry. It was not a political signal. It was not a diplomatic request. It was the sound of someone drowning in the dark. And on Earth, when you hear that sound, you answer. It is not bravery. It is just what you do. Because one day, you will be the one in the dark. And you will pray that someone, anyone, is listening. Elara felt something break inside her, a crystal shell of despair she hadn't known was there. The Concord's philosophy was about harmony, about avoiding conflict, about building perfect systems. They had forgotten about simple solidarity. They had forgotten about reaching into the dark. We have so much to give you, she whispered. Technology, knowledge, worlds. June shook his head. We did not come for payment. Then what do you want? He looked back out at the stars, towards the unseen bulk of the Chosen Shield, and the other human vessels now gathering in response to his call. We want you to look at us, he said. Not as Deathworlders. Not as monsters. Not as tools. Look at Choi Hana, cutting away death to save a life. Look at my crew, exhausted but still standing watch. Look at us and see people. See neighbors. When this is over, we want a seat at the table. Not as petitioners, as partners. Before Elara could answer, the ship's intercom chimed. It was Era. Captain, we have a problem. The destruction of the Lyrian Nexus caused a systemic shock in the Ravager swarm. It didn't kill them. It woke up something else. A central intelligence. It's pulling all remaining swarms from 3 systems towards a single gravity well. The Stardock's analysis suggests it's going to trigger a collapse, to harvest the quantum energy of a singularity. June was on his feet. Where? The Chiron Abyss, a neutron star remnant. It's a navigational hazard. No one goes there. Except us, June said, already moving. He paused at the door and looked back at Elara. The table can wait. First, we finish the storm. As he left, Elara stayed at the window. She no longer saw the humans as terrifyingly resilient animals. She saw the weariness on June's face, the care in Hana's hands, the loyalty of the crew. She saw the cost of their strength. They were not unbreakable. They simply refused to stay broken dot. She activated her comlink to the Concord High Council. This is Envoy Elara. The humans are engaging the final threat. I am observing. And I am informing you that when this is concluded, we will be discussing a new category of membership. One for those who answer the call. She took a deep breath, the first full breath she'd taken in weeks. One for the people who remember how to weather the storm. The Chiron Abyss was not a place. It was a verdict. A dense, spinning corpse of a star, its gravity so intense it bent light into a tight, punishing halo. Into this hellscape, the Ravager swarm was flowing, a river of black flesh and metal pouring itself into the gravity well. It was a suicide with a purpose. Commander Kim Era's analysis was grimly clear on the Chosen Shield's bridge. The intelligence is using the swarm's mass to destabilize the remnant's core, she said, her voice flat. It's trying to induce a quantum collapse. The energy released would be galactic. It would wipe out this sector and feed the intelligence for eons. Captain Lee Jun watched the tactical display. The Concord fleet hung back at the edge of the system, their elegant ships powerless. The Ravagers ignored them completely. The only thing disrupting the flow were the human vessels, 3 other ships besides the Chosen Shield, all as scarred and ugly as his own. They harried the edges of the swarm, but it was like throwing pebbles at a tidal wave. There's a concentration point, Era continued, highlighting a zone of intense energy readings, deep within the flowing swarm, perilously close to the neutron star's event horizon. That's the brain. Destroy it, and the swarm becomes mindless matter, shredded by gravity. And how do we hit it? Sergeant Kang Dae asked, his armor still smeared with Lyrian grime. Nothing we have can reach that deep, Park Min said from engineering. Missiles would be torn apart. A laser would diffract. We'd need to get a ship almost inside it. A cold silence filled the bridge. They all knew what that meant. Pilot Song Yujin, who had been quietly running calculations at her station, spoke without looking up. The shield has the densest hull. Our drive is the most physical. We could do a micro-jump. Not away. In. A pinpoint jump into the heart of that concentration. June looked at her. A jump that close to a gravity well? The margin of error is 0. 0, Eugen agreed, finally meeting his gaze. Her eyes were calm. And we'd have to overload the drive to punch through the swarm's mass. The ship would not survive the jump stress. We'd be breaking apart as we arrived. It's a one-way trip, Era whispered. June looked around his bridge. At Era, his steadfast mind. At Park Min, who kept the heart of the ship beating. At Kang Dae, who had walked through hell and back. At Choi Hana, who mended what was broken. At Song Yujin, who could fly through anything. He thought of Alara's question. What do you want? We send a message, June said, his decision solidifying as he spoke. To the Concorde. To the other human ships. We are going in. We will deliver a package to the heart of the swarm. They are to target that point with everything they have the moment we appear. Our ship will be the beacon. And the bomb. No one protested. They simply nodded. This was the logic of their world. When the avalanche comes, you do not run. You plant your feet, and you try to save the village below. Across the ship, the crew made ready. There were no dramatic speeches. Medics secured their patients. Engineers welded bulkheads shut. Marines checked the seals on their emergency pods, knowing they were useless this deep in a gravity well. They were not saving themselves. They were saving the mission. On the bridge, June sat in his command chair. Eugen. Plot the jump. Course laid in, Captain. Park Min. Divert all power to forward structural integrity and the drive. On my mark, burn it out. Aye, sir. Hammer the nail. June opened a channel to the fleet. This is Captain Lee June of the Chosen Shield. We are making our final run. Target the energy signature that will appear with us. Do not hesitate. For all our worlds. He heard the crackled affirmations. Then he opened a private channel to Envoy Ilara on the Concorde command ship. Envoy, you asked what we want. Tell your people this. When you look at the stars tonight, do not just see danger. See neighbors. Some are far away. Some are different. But when the dark comes, the distance does not matter. Only the answer does. Remember ours. Ilara's voice was thick. We will, Captain. We will. June closed the channel. He took a last look at his crew. It has been an honor, he said, his voice rough but clear. Honor is with us, Era replied, echoing the old saying. June took a deep breath. Eugen, engage. Song Eugen pressed the controls. The Chosen Shield's overloading drive screamed. Space tore open, not ahead of them, but around them. The ship did not leap. It was pulled, stretched, and then violently spat out. They materialized in madness. The heart of the swarm was a storm of churning metal and organic pulsations. A central crystalline structure glowed with stolen light. The Chosen Shield was already breaking apart. Alarms were not blaring. They were dying. The hull groaned like a living thing in agony. Fire all kinetic batteries at the core. June yelled, the deck bucking beneath him. Now, what was left of their weapon systems fired. A final salvo of solid slugs, propelled by chemical charges, hammered into the Ravager intelligence's crystalline form. It did not shatter it, but it cracked it. It lit it up like a target. Outside, the watching fleet saw the flash. The human ships fired every crude missile, every railgun slug they had left. The Concorde, acting on a new instinct, did not fire their beams. They used their targeting computers to guide the human projectiles. They became the spotter for the hammer dot. The combined impact hit the cracked crystal. For a second, nothing. Then, a wave of silent energy expanded. The swarm, connected to the now destroyed mind, went instantly inert. The river of black stopped flowing. Then, the neutron star's immense gravity took over. It began to feast on the lifeless swarm, pulling it down into oblivion dot on the bridge of the Chosen shield. There was no power, only emergency lights. The viewport was cracked. They could see the silent, collapsing spectacle outside. Did it work? Kang Day coughed in the dust-filled air. Era checked the dead panel, then simply looked out the viewport at the dissolving swarm. Yes, it worked. June felt the ship shudder one last time. They had done it. They had weathered the final storm. He looked at Song Yujing, who gave him a small, tired smile. Then a new sound. A deep, resonant thrum. Through the cracked viewport, a blinding light appeared, resolving into the sleek form of a Concorde ship. But it was not firing. Dozens of delicate, silver tethers shot out, latching onto the Chosen shield's broken hull. This is Envoy Alara. A voice, clear and strong, came over the surviving comms. We are not warriors, but we are engineers, and we do not let those who answer the call fall alone. Hold on, Chosen Shield. We are bringing you home. The graceful ship, leveraging its precise control systems, began to tow the shattered hulk of the Deathworlder vessel away from the crushing gravity, stabilizing its ruptured hull with energy fields. Weeks later, in the rebuilt halls of the Concorde, the maps were changed. Earth was no longer a red mark, a Deathworld Class 10. It was now blue, labeled Sanctuary World protected by its resilient children. The humans were offered a permanent seat, not as members, but as guardians, a new category they created together. Aboard the slowly repairing Chosen shield, Captain Lee Jun stood with Commander Kim Era at a viewport. They were looking at a new star chart, one dotted with friendly signals and open channels. It showed not just hazards, but homes. A seat at the table, Era said softly. June nodded, watching a Concorde scout ship wing past, its pilot waving. Not just a seat, he said. A place. Finally, a place. They had begged for aid, and only those who understood the dark had answered. Now, the galaxy was a little less dark for everyone.